All right. Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Unfortunately, you can see me too, so I apologize for that. I'm Tim Dutcher, supervisor with Pools and Environmental Health Services. I want to thank everybody for showing up and giving us your precious time. And everybody's busy, and luckily you didn't have to drive here in the rain and do it in person. So again, thanks everybody for doing this. Katie Rudisil and Chris Sells will be more or less handling the meeting today. If you have any questions throughout the meeting, please enter the question into the chat box and we will do our best to answer it as we go along. We will have time at the end also for open questions, so not a problem there. We had 150 people at our meeting 2 days ago, so we're doing great. We got over 60 here today, so I think it's a great turnout and we appreciate y'all's time. So I'm going to hand it over to Katie and let her get started. And again, any questions, stick them in the chat box and we'll do our best to pass them on and get them answered for you. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I am going to share my screen real quick with everyone. So if you'll bear with me 1 minute. Chris or Tim, if you can let me know that you can see my screen before we get started.
Yep, looks like it's working.
Okay.
Good to go.
All right. So like Tim said, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Copy of the slides is going to be available on our website come hopefully by tomorrow. I'll try to get them off to our IT person this afternoon. If y'all can mute your make sure you're muted too. So I'm going to mute. Make sure everybody's that way we don't get feedback. So a copy of the slides will be on our website. And actually this is being recorded. So if that will actually be on our website also for y'all for your reference for the future season. So as y'all know, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Katie Rudisil, if you've not met me before, out in the field. Chris Sells is the other senior who kind of runs the program. Tim's our supervisor over the entire program. And then Jeremy Michael is our program manager. All of our contact information is on the screen. So if you have questions during the season, feel free to reach out to any of us. If you can't get a hold of one of us, you can try another one of us. So again, our contact information, I think, is at the very end of the slide also. And again, we're going to be sending these slides out to everybody, well, posting them on our website also. So let's dive into it. So what we're going to be talking about today, some of the things we've talked about last year, if you guys were present for that operator meeting, I know we probably have some new and some existing pool operators on here today. So we're going to dive into the changes first with the new federal laws. We're going to be talking about infield plan review applications. And then we're going to be touching on the operating permit inspection process and this upcoming season, including application submittals and fees that we're going to be charging. Okay. So for those of you who are familiar with our program, we do have a website. It's mechpools.charmech.org. This website is your point of reference for finding your applications and PDSC forms, a lot of good checklists on there, fence and gate documents. We put a lot of useful documents on there. So if you're not familiar with it, you can go to the website and kind of just scroll through, see what we have on there available. We'll touch on some of the other documents a little bit later on in the spreadsheet that I want to highlight. All right, so we also have on our website a pool inspection video that we made probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where it walks through how our inspectors do an inspection. So if you're not familiar with the inspection process, you can watch this video and get an idea of what we're looking for when we do an operating permit inspection or just a regular annual pool inspection. It's a good step-by-step process. Now, of course, it doesn't incorporate everything that we may see out in the field, but most of the things that we see on a daily basis and what we're looking for on our permit checklist when we do our inspections for you all. Okay. I'm going to mute again. We'll mute all. All right. So what's new on our website? So last year, Chris and I painstakingly put together all your PDSC forms are now in one location on the website. So in the past, you've had master files where you had multiple different documents depending upon how many pumps you had and that type of thing. So now all your forms, your pool drain suction compliance forms, and any supporting documents that we have for it, like pump curves or drain cover information, are now in one document, and you'll find them listed as PDSC form on our website. Okay. PDSC form is new on our website for 2023. We'll get into the federal changes, which is why we had to update the PDSC form. That'll be in the next few slides. And then the infill plan review application is also new on our website. And this is for equipment changes. And again, this form incorporates the new federal law changes that we're having to do for Virginia Graham Baker. All right, one other document, well, a couple more documents on our website. Expiring covers list is the pool drain suction compliance list that we have for any pool in our county that has expiring covers. So if you have main drains or equalizer line covers, if you're on this list, it gives you the date that they expire and when they need to be replaced by. So if you're not on this list, then we don't have you in need of replacement of these your drain covers for this year. So double check this list, because this list may hold you up from getting your operating permit, depending upon whether or not you have required drain covers that need to be replaced. And then one more document on our website that's useful in assisting with identifying your pumps. So in your pump room, if you're not sure what kind of pump you have, if there's no placard on there, you can utilize this document. It's a pump curve document that shows what each individual pump looks like, so that you can at least identify manufacturer and the model number for the pump that you have on site. And then this can be used when, it's helpful when you're submitting PDSC forms to our department. All right, so we're going to first touch on the nitty gritty stuff. This is the regulation changes that happened. I think it was 2021 is when the federal law changed. And that's on the next slide here. So the federal law changed for both pumps and for drain covers in 2021. We're going to touch on the pumps first. We touched on this a little bit last year also, and then we'll hit the drain covers after that. So it went into effect in July 19, 2021. So the pump regulation change basically eliminated single speed pumps and are now going to variable speed pumps. So a manufacturer will no longer be able to manufacture a single speed pump. Okay, they have to meet the new energy efficiency requirements. So basically this means that they're having to go to variable speed pumps. So what does this mean for you as an operator? So if you are replacing your pump, your current 1 horsepower pump may not be available any longer. It's just not being sold by product suppliers. So the replacement pump that you put in has to meet those new energy efficiency requirements of the federal law. So you may not be able to do a like for like replacement. And if that is the case, we're going to require an infield plan review application to be submitted in order for us to review that pump to make sure that it works with your system. Okay, we may or may not charge a $250 fee depending upon when you get when the work is done, what we're able to see from the documentation that you provide us, the scope of work. There's a lot of different factors that play into whether or not we charge that $250 fee. I would plan for it, and then we may end up waiving it depending upon whether or not we can get field verification from our inspectors, or whether or not it requires a site visit. We usually charge the fee when it requires a site visit by a senior or one of our staff. So for an example of this, you have a Pentair Challenger pump. It burns out, okay? This particular pump, because it's a single speed pump, is no longer being manufactured by Pentair. So you're going to have to replace it with another pump. Most likely, it's not going to be a single speed pump because you're not going to be able to find that. So you're going to have to use a variable speed pump. Okay. So when you get that variable speed pump, you can replace it with that as long as the design flow and the max flow of the pump meet the restrictions of your pump room. And what I mean by that is when we're looking at a pump has a max flow, which is the hardest the pump can push through the pipe. It's the absolute volume of what can go through the pipe. And then it has what we call a design flow, that is basically what that pump runs at with friction loss and going through the pipes and that kind of thing. So we look at that when we're looking at approvals of these new pumps that you guys install. So on the infield plan review application, you're going to submit that, and then Chris and I will run the numbers on that to verify that your new pump will work with the existing system that you have there on site. Okay. You do not need to update your pump to a new variable speed pump until it goes. So if you have an old Challenger pump and it's working fine, there's no need to update it. It's only when it blows basically, and then you would have to go to you'd have to replace the pump. You can find a single speed pump, you can replace it with a single speed pump, but most, from what I'm seeing, variable speed pumps are the only pumps that are available right now. I think I saw a question, design flow is at 65 feet ahead. So that's how we design a pool unless we get true flow measurements, which we'll go into that in future slides. And then we actually are going to ask any PDSC forms that are sent in this year and infield plan review applications. We're trying to streamline our process so that we get response back to you guys quicker. So if you can send it, we now have an email address, pdsc@mecnc.gov, that PDSC forms and infield plan review should go to. In order for Chris and I to be able to respond as quick as we can, it's going to be that is a email address that both of us have access to. So whoever's available, you know, if I'm in the field or if he's in the field, whoever is available out of the two of us can grab that PDSC form or infield plan review and take a look at it. Okay. All right. So moving on from pumps, we also had in 2021 federal law change for the Virginia Graham-Baker Act. Okay. And that is what governs your drain covers and your equalizer line covers. So this change, like I said, went into effect in 2021. We started to see it some way in a little bit in 2022. And we are really seeing it this year in 2023. The product supply, the manufacturers were not allowed to manufacture any more of the old covers, but they could sell the old covers until they were out of supply. So we are now looking at this federal law change. Basically has two different ways of referring to drain covers. So when you hear me say 2008 or 2017, or you see that on a PDSC form, what I'm talking about is not the year of manufacture for that drain cover. The standard, basically, the standard change, what they made a change to Virginia Graham-Baker was how the drain cover was tested by the manufacturer. So the old covers were tested off of a VGB 2008 standard. The 2008 stands for the standard that they were tested off of. The new drain covers, which have started being manufactured after May of 2021, were tested off of the 2017 standard. So that's the difference between the VGBA 2008 and 2017, okay? So the old standard basically was a uniform standard that tested off of this figure that's on the right-hand side, okay? And that was tested, and for those of you who have filled out pool drain suction compliance forms, we looked at 1.5 times your pipe diameter from the bottom, so from the pipe to the bottom of the cover had to be 1.5 times your pipe diameter. So if you had a 2-inch pipe, it would need to be at least 3 inches. That standard is the old 2008 standard. So the new 2017 standard now tests based on your pipe size. It's very specific. So in the 2008 was really only off of like two things. We were looking at pipe size and distances. And now we're looking at pipe size combined with the minimum distance from the pipe to the edge of the sump. And then we're also looking at, you know, diameters, that kind of thing. So what we're now looking at and what we are seeing in the past versus what we are seeing in the past, and I'll go to the next slide here. So an old cover, a 2008 cover, would have one flow rating for your wall and one flow rating for your floor, okay? Now the new way of testing, because we're testing off of the diameter of your pipe, the distance from the suction outlet pipe, and the location of the pipe in the sump. So there's another dimension that's added into here. So because they're testing specifically to the sump dimension, and the sump is what is located underneath your drain cover, there's multiple different varying flows that can now be listed for a specific drain cover, okay? So if you take this example here, this Aquastar here, with 0-inch sump depth, they have a flow rating of testing of 138 gallons per minute. With a 3-inch sump depth, it's 170 gallons per minute. And with a 5.2-inch sump depth, it's 250 gallons per minute. So all of these different values, the gallon per minute readings that they're getting, are based on how that sump is set up underneath the drain cover. Underneath the drain cover that it's under, okay? So for example, if you're looking at the A10 cover, the VGB 2008, like I said, you had one floor rating and you had one wall rating. VGB 2017 is rated for multiple pipe sizes, pipe orientations, and pipe depths. So they have Aquastar or Hayward or Pentair or Waterway, they have actually gone in and done testing on each individual cover on each one of these sump dimensions to be able to get a true flow reading of what those covers are really rated for. So I blew up this next screen. You can see here, there's multiple different pipe sizes and there's multiple different depths and there's multiple different flow ratings. So basically, when you're looking at a replacement of your drain cover for this, the upcoming season or whenever they're due, you may not be able to do a like for like change out because the old covers were tested off of a different standard and have different requirements for installation than the new standards do. Okay. So when you're looking at your old form, so this is the VGB 2008 form versus the VGB 2017 form. You'll see on the old form, we asked for the diameter of the suction outlet pipe and then the distance of from the top of that pipe to the bottom of the drain cover. The new federal requirements require the diameter of the suction outlet pipe. Then you have where the pipe enters through the sump, so whether or not it comes through the bottom or the side, and then the sump minimum depth, which is the distance from the pipe to the edge of the sump, okay? It's no longer the bottom of the cover, it's the edge of the sump. So when you're filling out your PDSC forms, and I'll go to the next slide on this, make sure that you have the most accurate information. So we're going to require, if you have new drain covers, you need to submit on the 2023 form. And like I said, you're going to see additional information on there that wasn't listed on your old form. So you're not going to be able to pull all the information off of the old form any longer. When they change your drain covers out, whoever does this, whether or not it's you or it's a supplier, make sure that they are getting the measurements that you need in order to be able to fill that paperwork out. So, if they have to drain your pool or they dive to the bottom of your pool, make sure while they have those covers off, they're measuring the diameter of that pipe and they're measuring the distances from the pipe to the edge of the sump. That way you don't have to go back in to find those measurements because, like I said, location of the pipe is not on the old form, okay? So then when you submit the PDSC form, once you get your drain covers replaced, we need the manufacturer's pump curve submitted with it, and then the product spec sheets also need to be submitted. So they're going to be, in previous submittals, you were submitting, and actually we probably weren't even asking you for the product spec sheet because there was only one, it was either a floor or wall rating. So we knew that from the manufacturer, so we didn't necessarily always ask for that paperwork. But now, because there's different VGB listings on stuff, we need the product spec sheet that shows the flow rating of the drain cover. And then we also need the installation instructions for the sump underneath it. Because when we're looking at a drain cover approval, it's not just based on flow ratings now, it's based on sump dimensions of what is underneath the drain cover. Okay. So this next is just an example of PDSC form. This is available on our website at mechpools.charmec.org. We can also email a copy of this to you guys if you would like it. Send Chris or myself an email if you can't find it on our website. And it has the most current, like I said, 2017 versus 2008 stuff. And then this next slide here is just an example of what I was talking about. So this is an example of a Hayward spec sheet, okay? And this is two different spec sheets. The one on the right actually shows the flow ratings, and the one on the left shows the sump dimensions for what that cover needs to meet. So we're looking at both of these different things. We first look at when you replace a drain cover, does that specific drain cover meet the sump installation instructions of the manufacturer? And then after we say, yes, it does, okay, well, now does that drain cover meet the maximum flow requirements of the pump? So now it's a two-step process, okay? VGB paperwork should come with your drain covers that you get. It should list in there that they're 2017 or 2008. If you're able to identify if they are 2017 cover, I've been able to track down a lot of these product spec sheets from the manufacturer, so we can always assist with trying to get you what you need. You can just reach out to Chris or myself to be able to get those, and we can kind of try to help you walk you through the process. All right. So going hand in hand with your drain cover approval, if the maximum pump flow of your pump exceeds the maximum flow of your drain cover, we got permission. Well, the state sent out last year that we can now use what we call a true flow reading in order to be able to find the actual flow of the system and approve a drain cover based on a true flow. Okay. The measurement has to be taken after backwash, and there's two ways to do this, and we'll go into that in the next couple slides. But when I say maximum flow of the pump, I just want to reiterate what that means. So when I'm looking at a pump curve, you would take that curve all the way to the end, and you would find the maximum value for which that pump can pump. If the drain covers that you want to install can't handle that flow, you have the ability to use a true flow reading. And that would be filled out on the PDSC form, okay? When you're filling out a PDSC form, if I go back to this one here, the section there in the middle with that big box, that's where you would put the true flow readings if you were going to go that direction, okay? So the first way to take a true flow reading is going to be based on the flow meter that's installed on your system. So what we would require if you're going to use a true flow is you need to provide photograph documentation of the flow meter, okay? And the flow has to be after the backwash of your filter, because what we want is a clean filter to show the true flow of what's going through that system. The flow meter needs to be installed per manufacturer's instructions. So there are instructions on how to install a flow meter. You're required to have certain sizing on either, like certain distances on either side of your flow meter. Most everybody is familiar with the blue-white flow meters. They have the little bobber that goes up and down in them. The new versions have a 5 times pipe diameter on the inlet side and a 2 times on the outlet. So if you had a 2-inch pipe and you were going to use a true flow, you would have to have at least 10 times on the inlet side and at least 4 times on the outlet, because 5 times 2 inches is 10 inches, and then 2 times 2 is 4 inches. So you'll want to make sure if you're going to go this direction that you have that flow meter properly installed on that return line so that we can actually accept that as a measurement. And then, like I said, you would document that on your submitted PDSC form. Our inspectors would be checking if we do approve off of a true flow reading. The inspectors do check to make sure that that flow meter is operational during the inspection and that it's meeting the flow readings of what you provided us on that pool drain suction compliance form. All right. The other way to do a true flow reading is to take what we call total dynamic head loss measurements. That's a TDH measurement. And this includes putting pressure gauges on your pumps in 2 locations. You can see that on the picture there on the left-hand side. If you decide to do TDH measurements, you would need to provide photograph documentation of the pressure gauges. The measurements, again, need to be taken after you do a backwash. We would need a photograph documentation of the flow meter and the flow after backwash. And then again, same thing, your flow meter would need to be installed per the manufacturer's instructions. All this would be submitted on the PDSC form that you submit for approval with us. And then if you're using pressure gauges, those need to be kept in place, and our inspectors will be looking at that while we're out in the field. Okay. All right, so for PDSC forms and inspections, when you're scheduling, all VGB paperwork must be submitted. Pierce, I'll get your question in 1 second. All VGB paperwork must be submitted and approved before an inspection will be scheduled. So if you have drain covers that need to be replaced, those need to be submitted and the paperwork needs to be approved prior to our inspection that we're going to do on site. You can email those forms to pdsc@mecnc.gov. And just if we are verifying out in the field that a PDSC form, if information on there is wrong, it is going to be a $100 return visit fee. Okay. So you, by signing off on that paperwork that you submitted to us, that says that the information out there has been verified as correct. And our inspectors will be looking for that during their inspections like we've done in the past. If you have expired drain covers or equalizer line covers, they have to be replaced before the 2023 season in order to schedule an operating permit inspection with your inspector. Pierce, go ahead.
Do the TDH measurements there, it doesn't seem reasonable to do TDH measurements if you're still going to require the flow meter to be installed properly. And if we're trying to get below the number, the TDH calculations can help us get below that number. And even if that's correct, I don't see why we still have to go through the same flow meter photographic evidence.
The state is requiring the flow meter aspect of it. We have to enforce the flow meter because there's no way for us, if those pressure gauges go, you know, there's no way for us to be able to verify that. So it's kind of a 2-step system. We can circle back about that outside of the meeting if you would like, Pierce.
Yeah, it's pain to go do those measurements, but it's a moot point if you still got to get flow meter, you know, evidence.
Yeah.
So never mind. That's good. Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna head on to the next. So when a new form is filled out, all the portions of the form need to be complete. So if you're changing a pump out, we just don't want the form filled out with just pump information. We need everything filled out, drain covers, equalizer line covers, all of that. Same thing for main drain covers. If you're replacing main drain covers, don't just provide main drain information. It needs to be the whole form filled out so we can run the numbers to make sure that everything works, okay? I would recommend keeping a copy for yourself. Stuff does get lost every now and then. So keep the original for yourself. You can email, you can fax, or you can mail the PDSC form to our office. The best way is probably going to be emailing because especially during the spring, Chris and I are out in the field a lot. So the best way for us to work, we typically will work in the field when we can, and it gives us the electronic ability to be able to pull that paperwork and review it in the spare minutes that we have. So if you do mail it to the office, there may be a little bit delay on us getting approval for that. So email is probably the best. Again, it's going to be pdsc@mecnc.gov. And then your old PDSC forms are on our website. And I think in the next slide or two, I get into that on how to, yeah, I do, on how to find those. So all completed PDSC forms are going to be online whenever they're submitted and approved. Okay. So you should have one for you. Every facility here in Mecklenburg has an approved PDSC form. If you are doing a pump replacement, this requires approval by environmental health. Most of you probably have dealt with this because we've been looking at pump replacements probably for the last 5 years. So if you're doing a different pump than what it's not a like for like pump, the pump needs to be, a new PDSC form needs to be submitted with pump curves and the manufacturer spec sheets for flow ratings and the sump requirements. We need an infield plan review application. And then you also need to make sure that a licensed electrician pulls an electrical permit for that pump change. Code enforcement requires that an electrical permit be pulled for any changes that are made to your pumps, whether or not that's a motor or the full pump itself. Regardless, it has to be a licensed electrician because they are the only ones that are able to call in as a contractor to request inspections. Okay. We do request that infield plan review applications for equipment changes are sent, like I said, to pdsc@mecnc.gov. And then we'll run through the numbers on everything once we get that paperwork from you guys. We do try to pull from our old records sometimes. If we have existing information, especially for we can look at newer pools. We have a lot of existing information for newer construction builds. We'll try to pull from that information that we have to help assist you guys with infield plan review applications if you need help with that. If you have questions on how to fill that out, Chris and I are also always available to try to walk you through that process. Okay. So where to find your old PDSC forms? We talked about our website. So you're going to see that icon at the top that says need a document, applications, permits, and PDSC forms. And then you're going to type in your permit number. Okay. It's going to be in that left-hand side, and it's going to bring up all the documents that we have listed for you. We're talking about PDSC forms, but that's how you find your applications, how you find your invoices. You can also search by name, and you can also search by address. Just keep in mind that less is more with our website. It's kind of finicky when you are trying to search for stuff. So take, for example, if I'm looking for information for a Holiday Inn, you would do an asterisk and then type in Holiday and then another asterisk. And that will bring up all the information for every pool that has the name Holiday in it. Okay, so just try to limit what you're putting in the fields when you're doing a search, because sometimes it won't bring anything up. Okay, so we're going to switch topics now from PDSC forms to infield plan review requirements. An infield plan review, we started doing probably about 5 years ago. Most of the time, this form is used for pump changes. We do require paperwork if you're changing a filter, renovations of piping, relocations of equipment in your pump room, or changing equipment from what was on the original plan approval. But most of the time, this is going to be for pool pump changes is when we see this form. As a side note, if you want to go to salt for your pool, most pools in Mecklenburg, I could probably count on one hand how many we have approved for salt as primary chlorination. So if you are looking at moving towards a saltwater pool, and then you want to do strictly saltwater with no backup chlorination on that, that is going to be required to be approved by our department. Also, we'll need the specifications for the salt cells that you want to install. And we'll run the numbers to make sure that that salt system can handle the capacity of what your swimming pool needs for chlorination. Okay. So the infill plan review application, this, like I said, is on our website. It is new and it incorporates those new VGB standards that we were talking about. So if you're gonna fill one out, make sure you get the most current form, so that we have all the information that we need to have when we're reviewing. Again, like I said before, we may have some of this information in our system. So if you're having trouble finding this stuff, reach out to Chris or myself and we can look in our files to see if we have any of your old documentation. Depending upon the age of the pool, we do have some existing old records from original construction. All right, so the second thing we have is the infield plan review general form. So this form is used for renovation or repair work, not including your pump room. Okay, so this is going to be something like replacing your barrier, your fence and your gates, renovating a pool deck. So if you're taking up concrete and you're putting down travertine pavers, if you're doing swimming pool restrooms. So we see this a lot with like leasing offices and clubhouses where you decide to do an upgrade to the clubhouse area, and that includes the restrooms. This needs to be looked at by our department. Pool plaster, only if the color is not greater than 50% light reflective do we ever need to be notified about pool plaster. Most of your plaster companies know what our requirements are, but so the biggest thing is probably going to be pool restrooms. So what we're looking at for those pool restrooms is that the new flooring needs to slope to drain. It needs to be slip resistant. You have to have a hose bib in your restrooms and your mirrors need to be shatterproof. So we'll look for all this information before we do sign off on a leasing office or clubhouse renovation for their restroom. If you're replacing your pool perimeter fencing, if you remove your fencing, it needs to be brought up to current code. So we'll go out and we'll do a fence visit and we'll measure, make sure it's at least 48 inches in height and 2 inches or less underneath it, 4 inches between pickets. So it has to meet all what the current code requirements are, okay? And just to mention, if you are replacing fencing, if you install new fencing, code enforcement requires that a building permit be pulled by the fence contractor for installation of new fencing. So when you get a bid from your fence installer, they need to make sure that they know that they're required to pull a building permit. They sometimes don't realize that, depending upon if they're used to dealing with residential or commercial facilities. And then you may be, not you, but they may be required to pull an electrical permit also, depending upon the scope of work. So if it's just a fence that you're replacing, you probably won't need an electrical permit. But if you're doing like a key fob system, electronic entry, in that case, there's probably going to be an electrical permit that's needed for that also. Okay. What about removing a portion of the fence around the pool? If you're moving it, the rules state if you remove more than 50% of your barrier around your swimming pool, then the entire barrier needs to be brought up to current code. If it's less than 50%, that section of fence that you replace needs to meet current code, but the other section that's existing would not. We will verify that fencing has permits. So if we get the infield plan review application, we're going to look to see that the fence contractor has pulled the proper permits. And before we sign off on it, we're going to make sure that the building department has passed the inspection. Okay. Failure to pull those proper permits is going to delay your operation permit if it's something that we're looking at before you start the season. Okay, this next slide here is just an example of what the infield plan review general form is. This form's not as detail oriented as the other form. It just requires product spec sheets. So like if you're going to be replacing a fence, we want an example of what the fence is that you're going to be replacing it with. And this would come from whoever gave you your bid. If you're doing the restrooms, you would need to provide us with flooring specs to show that they're slip resistant, shatterproof mirror spec documentation, that kind of stuff. It's providing supporting documentation to go along with the infield plan review forms. Okay. What does infield plan review include? So a $250 fee may be required. Depends on, like I said, the scope of work and whether or not we have to make a site visit to the property in order to be able to verify it. We may be able to do it from pictures or video. Thankful for technology nowadays, so we can do a lot of this stuff virtual. So again, like I said before, I would plan for the fee, but it may or may not be required depending upon what you guys are doing out there. If you are just repainting a bathroom floor, does it require slip resistant coating on there? It does. So the flooring in a pool restroom has to be slip resistant regardless. Okay, so if you're redoing the floor, they do make additives you can add in to the paint that they put on the you can put on bathroom floors that adds like a aggregate in there that provides the slip resistant rating. In order to meet slip resistance from the federal standard, it has to be greater than 0.42 coefficient of friction for slip resistance. And that's what we look for on the spec sheets that we get from you for tiling and that type of deal. Okay. An infill plan review application needs to be submitted for approval before the work occurs. This goes for both for equipment changes and for the general form. If you're changing out a pump, we want that infill plan review form to be able to run the numbers on it before you purchase the pump. Because what we don't want is for you to purchase the pump and then put the pump in and it doesn't work. The same thing for replacing a fence or replacing flooring in your restrooms. We don't want you to put in a product and then have to remove it because it doesn't meet what our code is. By submitting those infill plan review applications ahead of time, it allows us to be able to review it to say yes or no. So it's saving everybody time and money in the future by not having to redo work. Okay. If you're unsure as to whether or not an infill plan review application may be required, reach out to me, reach out to Chris, and you can let us know what you're doing and we can say yes or no, you're going to be required to have this or not. Okay. And then just as a reminder, I touched on this before because we get questions on this every year. If you're changing a pool pump or a pool motor, regardless of which one it is, code enforcement requires that electrical permit. So we're going to be verifying once you get an approval on the pump and it passes on the infill plan review side that you've had that pump inspected by code enforcement and that it's been finalized by their department. We won't issue an operating permit without that electrical permit being finalized. All right, so now we're going to move on to this upcoming 2023 operating season. So like we've done in the past, all your seasonal and annual swimming pools, including pools, wading pools, spray pads, all your pools have to have a permit inspection prior to your permit issuance for this upcoming season. No changes like we've always done in the past. You will get a state permit like we've always done in the past, and that's going to be that paper permit. The local sticker is going to be our local permit. Your state permit does not have to be posted visible on your pool deck, so you can pack that away in the in your logbook if you want to do that, or keep it up at the front. You can post it, but it's not required. The local permit sticker has to be posted visible upon entry to the pool. So your inspector will give that to you once you pass your inspection, and then you will post that visible upon entry to the pool. Okay. Some tools for assistance for you. For those of you who are familiar with Mecklenburg, we have these permit checklists and they're available on our website. So we have one for each swimming pool, wading pools, spas, and water recreation attractions. These are what our inspectors a lot of times go off of while they're doing the inspections. So if you're not familiar with how to do a pool inspection, these checklists are very good tools in order to be able to check off, yes, I have all this done. I'm ready for my inspection. If you have the items on that list correct, then 99% of the time you're going to get a permit. I say 1% because there may be something else paperwork wise that may be holding you up. So utilize these permit checklists out in the field. We also have them available in Spanish on our website if you need that for assistance also. Okay. And then during inspections, just to note, and we'll touch on this one more time later on, we are going to be checking doors that lead onto your pool decks. Okay, so for leasing offices, clubhouse doors, amenity centers, restrooms, any door that leads from the outside where the public has access to onto the pool deck has to either self-close, self-latch, or self-close with an audible alarm. Even if it's been kept locked all year round, we still need to check it during the inspection. And you have to look at it from an inspector side or viewpoint, is that we're looking at this pool one time for the entire year. And we need to make sure that pool meets 100% of what our code requires. So we will be checking all of those doors. So when you go to set your appointment up, make sure that you have keys to those doors in order to be able to access them so we can check them during the inspection. Okay. 2023 permitting process. So same deal as last year. So all your seasonal and annual pools are going to require a permit inspection before they open for this season. The first day for a seasonal pool is going to be April 1st is when you can schedule your inspection. And that's going to be on Friday, April 1st. Seasonal pools go from April 1st through October 31st. Annual pools go from May 1st through the next April 30th. Okay. For seasonal pools, it's pretty straightforward. You schedule an inspection. Your inspector comes out, they issue an operating permit. Now, if you're a year-round pool, which is an annual pool, if you have been inspected by an inspector prior to May 1st, and you're on good acting status, so you have no suspension items and you have no 30-day follow-up items, we will issue your permit come May 1 without you having to do another inspection. It'll be an automatic thing. If your inspection has not occurred by May 1st, if you're an annual pool, we're not going to be issuing a permit without you having that good standing inspection. Okay. So if you're coming up into the beginning of April and you're an annual pool and you haven't had your inspection done by your inspector, reach out to them. The list of inspectors will be on our website come mid-March. Reach out to your annual inspector and see if you can get on their schedule in order to be able to get an inspection done. Our annual inspectors, we have 5 or 6 now, I think, annual inspectors, but they're juggling about 75 pools apiece. So they're trying to schedule a lot of these in a short amount of time. So they have they're time crunched a little bit. So if you can reach out to them, you can work on getting something scheduled with them if you haven't had anything prior to April 1. If you do have an inspection prior to the May 1 and you're given a 30-day intent to suspend for something that we give you additional time to fix, we will not issue your permit until that intent to suspend has been corrected. Same thing if you're on an immediate suspension. You're going to have to get off of that immediate suspension with a good standing inspection in order to be able to receive your operating permit. Okay. Permit inspections, we have 2 different codes that we do have. You've heard me talk about the state permit and the local permit. So our local permit is the sticker permit, and this is basically a lifeguard requirement that we'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation. And then we have our state rules, which is what you all are familiar with also, which is how we do our regular permit inspections. Okay. We will be posting the list for your inspectors. The inspector assignment list will be on our website come mid-March. I think we usually try for the 2nd or 3rd week in March for that because we have varying different inspectors every year. So we got to get a total list of who we have available, and then we assign accordingly. And then once that inspector assignment list is posted, you will be able to reach out to your inspectors just to set up an appointment. Your state permit inspections, those will be completed like they've been done in the past. Remember that all the permit checklists need to be permit checklist items should be correct before you schedule a permit inspection. If we come out and you have scheduled your inspection, it's going to be $100 return visit fee. Okay. Just make sure you're utilizing those permit checklists, or, feel free to reach out to Chris and me. And, if you have something that you think may hold you up, run it by us to see whether or not we would hold that up on an operating permit inspection. Just an example of what your state permit's going to look like. This will be provided by your inspector once you pass your inspection, and it will also be available on our website. And then, so now we'll talk about real quick our lifeguard safety requirements. And this is the Mecklenburg County local ordinance that I was referring to. And this is what you get the sticker for. So you cannot operate in Mecklenburg County without being in compliance with both your state and your local permit requirements. So the local permit is for lifeguards, and this identifies pools as different types of pools. So a type A pool is any pool that's not a hotel, apartment, or condo. Okay, so this is something, for example, like a swim club or a school or a rec center, that type of thing. So the local ordinance identifies that a pool that is a type A pool, so not a hotel, apartment, or condo, that is greater than 5 feet, has to have a lifeguard at all times, okay? If you are a type A pool that you are less than 5 feet, your CPO and your active emergency phone acts as a replacement for that lifeguard requirement. So if you're a swim club, an older swim club, for example, and you have a 9-foot pool, you would be required to have a lifeguard on duty at all times to meet our local ordinance requirement. Okay. So you can make a request for a variance if you do have a lifeguard requirement. That variance request form is available on our website. And once you fill it out, it's going to ask you details for name of the pool and location and the reasons why you are requesting the lifeguard variance. That form can be sent to Tim. And then once we approve it, you will get notification. If we approve it, you will get notification of the approval for the variance. And then your inspector for the next upcoming seasons, we notate that in our system, and we're able to track that. So your inspector from year to year will know whether or not you have a lifeguard variance or not. It will be in their books that they get that have their territory assignments in there. Okay. Just an example of what the local permit sticker looks like. This was from 2020. We have, I'm not sure what we ended up with for color this year for 2022, but these will be provided for a seasonal pool. They'll be given to you during your inspection and posted during the inspection. An annual pool, if you have an inspection prior to April 1st and you're on good acting status, we will mail a copy of this to you. If you are after April 1st, your inspector will be giving you your sticker on site once you pass for good acting status. Okay. All right, 2023 application and fee submittal. So we're coming up on the deadline date here. So for 2023 permitting, again, this is the portal for our search engine. So like how we were looking up PDFC forms before, you go to our website, you click on that little magnifying glass that says need an application permit or PDFC form. It'll bring the search engine up, and then you can search for your pool to find the most current application and invoice and any other documents we have for you guys. So again, like I'm just going to reiterate, just make sure you're using asterisks around if you're searching by name, it's an asterisk, the name of the pool, and then another asterisk for it to pull it up if you don't have your permit number. This is just an example of the application that we have online. It is pre-populated from the information that you provided us with last year. So when you are printing these applications off, review them, make sure all the information is up to date. If it's not up to date, unfortunately, we have not gotten electronic with these yet. Hopefully in years to come, it will be, but you're gonna have to go a little dinosaur and strike through and write it in. Make sure that it's legible, because again, like I said, this information on these applications is how we're able to do outreach to y'all. This is how we got your information to be able to inform you about these operator meetings. It's how we send out information for any changes for upcoming seasons, that kind of thing. So make sure the information is correct, and then make sure you'll submit that application to our department by February 28th, end of business. So the state is the same. It's a different day than it was last year, but you have until the 28th of February to get this in to our department. Okay. Permit fees are going to stay the same. Your seasonal is 130. Your annual is 250 for the year-round permit. Late fees, this has not changed. It's going to be $120 per pool. So if you have multiple pools, so you say you have a pool, a waiting pool, and a spa, and you're late on all three of them, you will pay an additional $120 for each one of those pools. So it's important to get that money and those applications in before that February 28th deadline. And then again, like we talked about before, there's a $100 return visit fee that's going to be required for return visits if a pool does not pass inspection the first go around. Let's see. This here is the invoice. This is also available on our website. You do not have to turn this invoice in with your application. The only thing that we need with the applications is really your application and obviously the CPO information filled out on there. But this invoice is really for y'all to be able to get the bill paid if you need to send it up to corporate or something along those lines. So this does not need to be submitted with your application. If you need a W-9, which we get requests for this probably every year by at least 2 or 3 people. Sabrina Davis with Mecklenburg County is the person that you will need to reach out to in order to be able to get that W-9. You can always shoot me or Chris an email and we can get you her email address also, which may be easier than reaching out to her by phone. And then how to pay. You can either mail the check to 3205 Freedom Drive, Suite 8000, which is our office. You can pay over the phone by a credit card. We just need to make sure that we have the application in hand when you pay by phone. So you can send the application to MECPools at mecnc.gov. You can send the application to me. You can send it to Chris. You can send it to Tim. We prefer the MECPools website though, and then we'll forward that over to our front office staff, and they can either reach out to you and get your payment. So if you want them to call you for payment, write on the application your contact phone number. Please call such and such for payment, and they will actually reach out to you directly to get your payment. They get very busy up in the front during pool season. We have, like I said, 1,500 pools in our county and everybody is trying to pay all at the same time. So if you can't get through and you want to pay by phone, you do have that option to write it on the application and they will call you to take your payment. If you're submitting an application that's separate from the check, or you're going to be paying by phone. So if you have a check that's coming separate, make sure you write on the application that the check will be coming separate and make sure that the check identifies who that payment is for. We get every year at least 1 or 2 checks that we just get a check and we have no idea who the check is for. So make sure that the check references the pool that it applies to. Okay. All right, other items to note, we don't have too much longer on this presentation and then we'll open it up for questions to everybody. These are just some items that I want to touch on before this upcoming season. First thing being night swimming. So if you are a pool and you do not operate from dawn to dusk, if you operate after dusk or before dawn, you are required to have night swimming approval by our department, okay? Basically what that includes is our inspectors will make a visit out to the property at night, whether that's early in the morning or later in the evening. And we're going to verify that you have sufficient light to be able to see all areas of your pool deck. Okay. And we'll write your permit. We'll do a night swimming approval while we're there on site. The rules changed probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, where we took out a specific light requirement. It used to be 10-foot candles, and now they define the rule as sufficient lighting. So what does that mean? So if you want to go out and or try for night swimming approval, we're going to go out there and we're going to say, okay, do they have sufficient lighting to be able to clearly see all the main drains in all areas of your swimming pool? All your required deck space is clearly illuminated. So that's going to be, depending upon the pool, 6 or 8 feet. Spas have to have 4-foot clearance, and wading pools have to have 4-foot clearance. So do all areas of that, the required deck space, is it clearly illuminated? And then all parts of the pool, the water, your depth markers, your emergency signage, your gates, all interior parts of the pool area have to have sufficient lighting so that we can see all areas of the swimming pool and around the pool area. Okay. So when we go out there to do the inspection, if you were previously approved for night swimming, it is up to the inspector what, if they want to approve based off of a previous approval. When you get the initial night swimming approval, we go out there and we draw out a picture of the swimming pool and the barrier, and we mark on it everywhere everywhere that you have lighting. Okay. So that night swimming documentation form is actually, if you've been approved, it's scanned in and it's on our website and it's listed under your pool. And the way inspectors will approve off of a previous approval is they take that night swimming form and they have it out in the field with you, and they say, okay, do you want night swimming for this upcoming season? If you do, make sure let's turn on all the lights to make sure they're operable. Then they match this night swimming documentation form. If you're able to do that while they're out in the field, the inspector has the ability to approve off that old paperwork. They may or may not feel comfortable. That's why we've said we're going to leave that up to the inspector. So it's going to be a case-by-case scenario. It's either going to be they'll approve off that old form, or they'll just swing by and make a night swimming visit at another time. We can amend the permit, so your inspection does not have to be at the same time we do the night swimming visit. We can do your permit inspection and then, schedule 2 days later where we come back after hours to amend the permit for night swimming. You'll have to set that appointment up with your inspector though. So if you're operating outside of dawn to dusk, you will need a night swimming approval. Okay. Fence and gates. This is something that, every year we run into fence and gate stuff. So I just want to touch on some of the common things that we see. We do have a step-by-step guide on our website that runs through the rule interpretation of the 2528 rules. They're kind of hard to read, so we tried to break it down a little bit. And there's also, it's the pool barrier guidance document on there. We also have a couple other barrier guidance documents on our website too. Just a reminder, there are no grandfather clauses for gates. So regardless of, and actually, let me back that up. So in 2010, they changed the regulations so that pools built after May 1st, 2010 had to meet new regulation standards, and the old pools do not have to meet those barrier standards, but they did not grandfather in your gates. So regardless of the year of install, whether or not you were built in 1983 or if you were built in 2019, your gate has to meet 100% of what the code requirements are. Okay. So your fence, if you were built before that May for, I think it's April 30th, 2010 date, you may not have to meet the barrier requirements, but you will have to meet the gate requirements for the rules. Very confusing, but I just want to point that out. And then we kind of talked about this before. Again, all doors leading from your pool deck need to self-close, self-latch, or self-close with an audible alarm. And we will be looking at window limiters. So in in like apartment complexes or condos, if you have windows that lead out onto your pool deck, that surround your pool deck, those windows need to be limited at 4 inches or less, okay? That's part of your barrier, and we don't want a child to be able to raise that window up and be able to get out onto your pool deck. Wading pool fences, regardless of the date of construction, these wading pool fences were not grandfathered in, unfortunately. The swimming pool fences do have that grandfather clause, but wading pool fences do not. So regardless of the year of install for a wading pool fence, it has to meet 100% compliance with the code, unfortunately. So just make sure you're looking at that when we do our inspections. And then last, just a maintenance reminder. We see this every year for shocking your pool. The county, in the state, we allow for shocking of your pool for instances like an algae bloom or a fecal incident, something like a treatment of your swimming pool. What we don't want to see is hand feeding chlorine into your pool to increase your chlorine, especially right before we come out there to do our inspections. So if you are shocking your pool, that pool needs to be closed to the public when you do it. And we don't want to see pucks in your skimmers, pucks in the bottom of the pool, or broadcasted granular all over the top of your swimming pool. When we do an inspection, part of that inspection is making sure that your chlorinator in your pump room is working properly. And we can't verify that it's working properly if you are shocking it by putting granular in there, or if you're putting chlorine pucks in the skimmer baskets. So if we go out there to do an inspection and we see one of these two things, we're unfortunately not going to be able to pass the inspection. It's going to be a return visit for us to come back at a later time to verify that your chlorinator is actually working properly. Okay, so just a few dates to remember, and then we'll open this up for questions. February 28th is going to be the last day to submit your permit fees without paying a late penalty. Mid-March of 2023, that's when the inspector assignment list is going to go online. April 1st is going to be the start of your seasonal pool season and when pre-permit inspections can start. And then May 1st is going to be the start of the annual swimming pool season. And then this last slide here is just our contact information, and I will go ahead and leave that up. And I am done on my side, so we're going to open this up for questions, or Chris or Tim, if anybody had anything in the chat that we need to address.
Yeah,
Just
there's
raise your-
one from the chat about the requirements for dive blocks for swim team starting blocks.
Okay, so if you are a swim club and you have diving blocks, there's a 2-part requirement for those diving blocks, and I'm not going to get into the installation of how they need to be set up. If you have that specific questions for that, you can reach out to me directly. But what our inspectors are looking for diving blocks is, first of all, you have to have a lifeguard attendant that's constantly monitoring that dive block. So that's the first section of what the rules require. And then, and you have to have either some sort of signage on there that says like warning, danger, do not use, you know, without being supervised. It has to be some sort of signage on there, or a way to keep people off of it. So you can like put something over top of it. You can put a cone on it. You can, so that when they're not in use, that it keeps people from getting on them to use them. Because what we don't want, they're for like swim team type practices, but we don't want a child who has no idea how to use a diving block to be able to get on there and start to dive off of it. So you have to meet the 2 requirements in order to be able to have diving blocks.
Right, and we have a question about cutoff dates for VGB 2008 certified covers. Will they be allowed indefinitely, or is there a date?
They'll be allowed indefinitely until they're no longer, you can no longer find them. So We are still seeing every now and then I'm getting a 2008. Eventually it's going to get to the point where there's just no product supply there anymore. So until you can't find them anymore, they're still permitted for use. They will never be not permitted as long as they're new in there. Yeah. So
Got a two-part question about gates. If it's only used for exiting, does it need to have an alarm?
so
And
for let's do the first one first. So the gates, any gate onto your pool has to self-close, self-latch, unless it's a maintenance gate. And I did touch on this in the last meeting earlier this week. So actually, thank you for the question. So maintenance gates for our department are defined as a true maintenance gate. So if you're using that maintenance gate for, say, lawn equipment or for maintenance people to come in to do landscaping, something that's really truly a maintenance gate doesn't necessarily have to, it would just need to, it just needs to stay closed. Whereas if it's not, then it needs to self-close, self-latch. So if it's a gate that you don't ever use all year round, but it could potentially be opened by somebody, it still needs to self-close, self-latch. You can lock it shut after we do the inspection, but it still needs to self-close, self-latch during the inspection if it's a gate. What was the other question, Chris?
the other part of it was if the gate's locked throughout the season, doesn't need to have an alarm. So we don't ever really require alarms on gates.
No, doors are the only things that we allow to alarm, doors and windows. So it has to, gates have to self-close, self-latch. Doors have the option to self-close, self-latch, or self-close with an audible alarm.
Okay, and there's a question about doors. So this is kind of long, so I'm just going to kind of give my answer to it. If when we say doors, the doors do lead directly onto the pool deck. If you have a separate fence with a gate, those doors do not lead directly onto the pool deck. Those are not the doors we would be speaking about. Your barrier would be the gate. If that is not your question, just please either reach out to me or type something back in the chat. And a follow-up on the one from before, asking about the alarm not self-latching. So yeah, there is no alarm requirement. Okay, and that's all the questions from the chat at this time. Does anybody else have one that they I'm sorry, one just popped in.
Yep.
What are some examples of where a lifeguard variance would be approved? I think Tim had said to reach out to us directly. It's normally done on a case-by-case basis. Do you have anything to add to that, Tim?
Yeah, it's, we'll ask you for, the reason you want the variance and what you will be doing to ensure that the pool will be operated safely. If you have a 15-foot deep pool with a diving board and a slide and you're requesting a lifeguard variance, there's a good chance the health director will not approve that. But if you have a pool that's, 5 feet, 2 inches deep in a small neighborhood and you have good security on the gates and all the safety equipment, there's a better possibility that that could happen. So it comes down to what your establishment is willing to do to ensure that the pool will be safe and the way the pool is constructed and its usage. So please feel free, reach out to me directly or to MEC Pools. I see all of those emails that come through, and I'm happy to give suggestions or guide you through the process. Okay. Anything else? We're here for you whenever.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us. Your assigned inspectors, we're always here for assistance, me, Tim, and Chris. So we really do appreciate your time today.
Yeah, as a lot of things, we ask you to reach out to us in advance before you start doing something. We're doing that to save you time and money. You know, if you spend 3 days ordering a pump and getting it installed and inspected, and we come and say it's going to blow out your system, we can't approve it. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, things are done right the first time and we're not wasting everybody's time and money. Okay?
All right, with that, I'm gonna close it on down then. We appreciate it. Thanks. Thank
Great.
you, everybody. If we haven't answered your questions or if we missed it, circle back with us. And again, the slideshow will be on the website, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow. If not, first thing on Monday, as long as our IT department can get it posted up. If you want a copy of the slides, I can also send you a copy of those too. Hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks.